Yeah.
That's just sitting there.
Yeah.
That's worth more than most of these guns up here, just because it's so few and far between.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's amazing.
I slept on the couch for 2 nights over that one.
Colby here with Rugged Tactical. Every trigger pull tells a story, and responsible gun ownership is a way of life. We're here at the Idaho Ford Center, the Lewis and Clark Gun Show. I've had a great experience here at the gun show. I've met a lot of people. The main attraction to the show is the Ruger displays. So to be able to get to meet the people behind these incredible displays, it's been a great experience. I've truly enjoyed it. Here I have Troy, and Troy has a display. Troy, tell us a little bit about you.
My name's Troy Riggenbaugh, and I would be mistaken if I didn't point out that the display is actually a design of my wife, Taryn. So usually in most cases, it's Troy and Taryn Riggenbaugh's display. We're from Idaho Falls, so a little bit of a jaunt over here, 3.5 hours. This is one of our favorite shows to go to every year. If there's any one show we go to every year, it is this show. It's a regional show. We get a lot more of the regional people here, the regional Ruger collectors here. So you'll see a lot of the faces here you don't see at the big shows.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the big things I like about coming to this show, and why my wife and I come to this show every year, and make the 4-hour drive in the middle of January and snow, blizzard, etc. To come to this show.
Luckily, we've had great weather thus far. I mean, it has rained, it hasn't snowed.
Here in Boise, yes, but not home in Idaho Falls.
Oh, and you've got some snow there.
A blizzard going on there, yeah. So
same with down in Utah. We got 2 inches down there, but here in Boise, it's been raining, so it's been good. So what are some of the other shows that you attend?
We have done the Ohio Gun Collector Show back in Ohio. That is you have to be a member, so it's not open to the public. It's one of the larger gun clubs, I think, in the nation. It was a lot of fun, but Ohio is a long way to go.
That's a long drive.
For a show. And then we do our best to do Tulsa every year, every other year, just because that's the big show. And that's the big show for ROCS, which is the Ruger Owner Collectors Society. That's one of their big sponsored show, and so that's if you're a Ruger collector, you almost have to go to the Tulsa show because you're nobody if you don't show up there every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's actually where I met you for the first time. Was in the Tulsa
just a few months ago.
November of 2024.
And we did not display that year. I was planning on going, but work had gotten in the way, so we knew we weren't going to be able to display. So I was going to fly down and just attend and then fly home, and then work changed, and we actually were able to drive down, so Taryn got to go with me, and we just didn't have time to put a display together.
But even though you didn't have a display, you were there, you participated, and I'm sure you had a great time.
Rubbing elbows and making sure that everybody knows that I'm still alive, and and what I'm looking for. A lot of these guns, as you get into the collecting world, are never for sale. So if you're looking for something hard to find, like a one of 17 brass frame non-prefix, if you're looking for one to sell, you're never going to find it. You have to put the word out to the guys that already own them that you're looking, and so that gun changes hands without anybody really knowing. Because the collectors communicate.
Okay, well, so there you go. Insider tip.
No insider tip. You didn't hear nothing.
But that's the reality, right? I mean, we as human beings have connections. We create relationships and establish those relationships. And if you have a hobby, if you have a passion about something such as Ruger, then it just makes sense that you would start brushing shoulders with people who are in connection with Rugers, and so that you can find something that you're looking for, and who knows, things might just work out in such a way that it benefits you. People have bucket lists for vacations they want to go on. Same thing with wish lists as far as gun collecting or cars or whatever it might be.
100%. If you're not going to find a collectible Ruger going to a car show.
No.
Well, a swap meet. Never say never.
No.
You
might
your
find
chances are better at finding it if you're going where the others are.
That's right.
Been collecting Rugers probably 15 plus years. I worked at a gun store up in Montana. I grew up in Missoula, Montana, and worked at a gun store going to college. And usually this is phase 2, version 2 of this display. I ended up replacing my worn out standard flat top with a much nicer version. And the first time we did this display, I had my very first Ruger 3 screw that I ever bought. And I bought it at that gun show as an employee. And it was top and center in this display, and I could point to it when I was talking to people and say, that's the gun that hooked me.
Okay.
And I feel bad that is not on this display because I can't point to it and say that's the gun that sucked me in. And so that was, probably 15, 20 years ago when I was in college that I got the hook.
Yeah.
And, putting that gun back to factory configuration and learning what I learned and learning how much I didn't know is kind of what fed the beast and led to the different displays that we put together.
With an introduction to your first gun then, you worked at a gun store.
Yep.
Now, is that where you saw your first Ruger? Is that where you purchased
No,
it?
how
did you come about it?
I had owned other Rugers in the past, but they were all shooters. They were all modern guns that you take to the range and shoot, or you carry when you're hunting.
Yeah.
This gun was something that came in on consignment. It went into the gun display for sale. I came into work because I worked evenings and weekends, and I came into work and saw it sitting down there, and I pulled it out, and it's a 4-digit flat top, and I got all excited, and it was $599.95, and it was Montana, so no sales tax. So I paid $600 for my first collectible Ruger.
Collectible, very good.
I didn't know anything about it. All I knew is that it was a 4-digit gun, it was a flat top, and it was a 44 mag. Well, it turned out it had been massively customized. It had the wrong grips on it. It had been converted by the factory, and I knew none of that when I bought it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to convert it back to factory
Kind
original.
of original, yeah.
And so you just start searching the internet, looking at books, and doing whatever you can to find out what you need to do it. And that's where I found out I knew so little. And then as you start doing your research, and then you start seeing other guns at different stores, and my second collectible Ruger was a duplicate serial numbered 161,000 single six, and I just stumbled on it with my dad at a pawn shop in Helena, Montana, of all places, and I knew that D was important, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
But because of that first gun and the research I'd done on it, that there was that thing in the back of my brain that said, that's an important gun, you should buy it.
Yeah.
And so that was my second collectible Ruger that I bought. And then as you're researching that, it's just that snowball that's rolling downhill, and as it goes, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you end up with with this and a bank account and a wife that is making you sleep on the couch.
Oh, that is the seed then.
Oh yes.
That really...
Oh, that was the fish hook, the lure.
Yeah, lure that drag you into not just gun ownership, but within the collectible world.
That's what brought me into collecting world.
Did you grow up with guns?
Yep.
Yep.
I grew up in Missoula, Montana.
Yeah.
And
so
even,
it was kind of a part of your life.
Yep.
Very familiar,
The owner of the gun store I worked at, he always referred to me as his best customer.
Okay.
And I was a hoarder. I didn't have any focus. And so for me, working at that gun store, something would come in, it's like, oh, that's cool, I need that.
Yeah.
And I would just buy it. And my, that 4-digit flat top kind of focused me on Ruger.
Yeah.
And then my wife said, you need to focus.
Yeah.
And so I got rid of almost everything that was non-Ruger related, and then reinvested that money towards other Rugers, and it got me focused on basically what the subject matter of this is. These are the original 44 mags. There is a gun missing right here that got left at home in the gun safe, but it is the original 44 mag rifle. Which was the semi-automatic, like the 1022, but in a 44 mag. Okay. And so that was kind of the culmination of this display. Is the flat top came out in '57 in the 44 mag, followed by the Super Blackhawk a couple years later. So what this display is about is if you were buying a Ruger between 1957 and 1963, when the flat top was discontinued, these are your choices. So if you went into a gun store, Ace Hardware, whoever it was back then that was selling them, and you opened up a Ruger catalog and said, I want to buy a Ruger, these were your options.
Okay.
The one cheater is this one. They did not offer the brass frame until 66, I believe. So technically this gun is not included in that time frame, but it's such an important piece in the world of the original 44 mags that I just couldn't leave that one out. The idea behind, and really in my Ruger collecting where my wife told me to focus.
Yeah.
Cut it down. And just because when you get into Ruger collecting, as you can see from all of the different displays in here, you can go a million different directions in Rugers, even though they've only been around for 75 years. Yeah. Well, what I focus on for the collecting purposes for me and therefore the display is Ruger's introduction in 1949. Up until 1963, which is when, number one, they got rid of the XR3 grip frame and went to the redesigned grip frame, and at the same time, they discontinued the 44 mag flat top and the 357 flat top. So 1963 has been my cutoff.
Okay.
Again,
so all the guns that you own are essentially before 1963. Then.
So the majority,
not that you own, but that you collect as far as
the ones that I display.
Yeah.
Because you really can't be into the Rugers and come across I've got a duplicate 22 mag that is outside of that, but you come across a gun like that in a shop and you know that it's a collectible gun, you kind of got to buy it.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of displaying, that's where we've kind of drawn the line is, the nice guns, the ones we're looking for to make these displays is 1949 with the introduction of Sturm Ruger to 1963 with the transition away from the XR3 grip frame and the flat tops.
You mentioned this gun here. Mm-hmm. Explain to me again the transition.
Okay, well, so the flat top is the original. So the 44 mag flat top, which is going to be represented on this side, so that is the one that's Ruger's first 44 mag, and so that's the catalog down here is an actual catalog from Ruger from 1955, introducing the 44 mag flat top.
Yeah.
This gun right here is the base model. So that is the gun that you're going, when you were buying a 44 mag flat top in 1957, you were getting the 6.5 inch. It was later on in the progression that you got the other options.
Okay.
And so eventually you could get a 7.5 inch or you get a 10 inch. And so those were your three choices. So if you walked into the Ace Hardware or gun store and said, I want to buy a 44 mag flat top, they'd say, you want a 6.5, 7.5, or a 10 inch.
Very good.
The bottom one is a transition. Ruger was the king of not throwing anything away. So the 44 mag flat top was being discontinued, but they already had frames built.
Okay.
They were discontinuing the XR3 frame at the same time. Well, they ran out of XR3 frames before they ran out of the flat tops. So the redesigned grip frame was put on the last 200, give or take, 44 mag flat tops that were produced. And so this gun was only available in 1963, and I believe it was only 1 month worth of shipping. I think it was either June or July. July is when that gun was shipped. In 62, my apologies, I said 63. And so that one is on here just even though you couldn't really buy that one, but there was a chance if you ordered this one, that's what you got.
And then that's what
just
you got.
Because that's what they had left. You could. It's kind of like Henry Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. Well, if you were at the end of the game and you wanted a flat top, well, you can have any flat top you want as long as it's got an XR3 redesigned grip frame on it. Now, what's on this side over here, all guns shipped with the wood or plastic grip frames. But you could buy from Ruger factory stag or factory ivory that allowed you to upgrade your gun if you wanted to. Very few, probably a handful, if not one or two guns will letter as coming with those. They were always something you bought later on.
So coming back to this side of the display, tell me a little bit about,
Okay, so the Super Blackhawk was the bigger gun, the bigger 44 mag that you could buy. It came out in 59. And originally they all came out with 7.5 inch barrels. What they did is they had two different grip frames. You get the long grip frame that was 1/4 inch, give or take, longer, deeper for people with bigger hands, or the standard, which was a little shorter. The numbers on those have kind of changed over the years. 300 was the number that most of the time you would hear when they were talking about these. That number is probably low. I think I haven't seen any new numbers in regards to how many were made, but it's much more than 300 now. So they're still fairly hard to come by, and they only were in the initial rollouts of the gun. But those are one of the originals were those two options. The third one on here is an accident gun, which Ruger was all about accidents. It's a 6.5 inch super, and lore that goes with it, urban legend, whatever you want to call it, is Ruger produced the flat top in a 6.5 inch barrel. They produced the super in a 7.5 inch barrel. They're different contours. So this is a heavier barrel than that one. And the guy that's job was to cut the barrel lengths, ended up with super barrels and was cutting them thinking that he had flat top barrels.
Oh,
so he
really?
was cutting them off at 6.5 inches.
6.5. Oh dear.
He made that all the way up to about 600 guns before somebody figured it out. Well, Bill Ruger's not going to throw anything away.
Yeah.
So he put them together as guns.
Yeah.
They were all shipped to one distributor, and they took the box, and the factory box on here is still the S47, which is the standard 7.5 inch, and they just took a Sharpie
and just marked
blocked
it
out the
yeah.
7.5, and then they were all sent to one distributor
with
the knowledge that, hey, these are
they're actually
but we're
the shorter barrel. So really on the box there was no indicator that it was actually 6.5.
And some of the boxes didn't have the Sharpie. I've actually I owned one prior that it was factory number to the gun lettered as a 6.5, but they didn't Sharpie it. But the majority of them, I think you'll find, are going to have the Sharpie on it.
Yeah.
To the point that as a collector, you're like, I want to pull the Sharpie out. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. That's not how it left. So instead, I just found one that had been Sharpied. Now, with those, they came primarily with the blued. You could get the brass frame. Now, as a non-prefix, I believe a total of 17 of them that were actually factory made that will letter as a non-prefix, meaning they were shipped before '69 with a brass frame. But you could buy a factory brass grip frame if you wanted to take your gun and turn it into a brass. And so the factory did offer this kit that came with, it came in this box.
Yeah.
And it was the brass frame, and then taped to it is the target trigger. So that you would have the true conversion. So if you had one of these that didn't have the target trigger and you wanted to put it on that gun, you could buy the brass. It has the target trigger that goes with the bigger slot that was put into these.
And that makes it it has a really nice look to it, a brass frame.
Yeah, it gives it gives it a non-traditional Ruger look, because Ruger really wasn't into the glamour. Yeah, it wasn't into. They were a utilitarian gun. They were for use.
Yeah.
That first gun that I had that's all worn out, that is a 4-digit. That's what Bill Ruger wanted his guns to do.
To be used.
To be used, and I say loved. And
put a lot of love into it.
And show that somebody put that time and with it.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
I'd like to take a moment to inform you of my Patreon page. Our mission at Rugged Tactical is to take you on a journey exploring the reasons why people own guns and how firearm ownership can have a positive impact in their lives. If you'd like to get on our mailing list, head over to patreon.com/ruggedtactical. There you can click on the free membership icon and add your email information. If you enjoy the content that I'm creating and would like to support the channel, consider joining one of our paid membership tiers. We have the Recruit, the Sharpshooter, and the Tactical Master tiers. Thanks for joining me today, and let's head back over to the interview.
You've got some boxes down here.
So the boxes kind of go with the time frame.
Okay.
So the mahogany boxes were the first options when you bought, the original ones. Through about serial number 3500, you would get this mahogany box. The vendor that produced these, their factory burned down. And so Ruger lost out on the supply of those guns, or these boxes for the guns. He didn't want to lower the price. He didn't want to lower MSRP and ship the gun with a lower quality box. So after about serial number 3500, the answer was to come out with this white corrugated box.
Yeah.
And so they used the white corrugated box up till about serial 12,000, give or take.
Yeah.
These are actually really hard to find. People save mahogany boxes.
Yeah.
This is a target. You buy this is perfect. You take it out of the range and you set it up and you shoot it.
Yeah.
So even though there was so many more of these produced, they're harder to find than mahoganies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Of this display, we've been here all weekend. I have had multiple people try to buy one of these.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's tried to buy anything else on this display.
But they want a box.
I have had multiple people coming up looking, hey, you want to get rid of one of those white boxes?
Yeah.
Like, no, I do not. Then they transitioned to this. And so after about serial number 12,000, they went to the what traditionally they shipped in, which was the black and red. And this one just has the shipper still with it.
Yeah.
And so that's where the majority of them, these are easy to find. If you've got a super that you want to find a box for,
you can find those.
Yeah,
they're available.
S47. It's pretty easy to find them. The yellow and black boxes, those were the flat tops. So you've got the 6.5 inch with no catalog number on it. Mm-hmm. Then your 7.5 inch does have the BKH 47, and then your 10 inch will be the BKH 40. These are actually extremely hard boxes to find. As you can see, I do not have a shipper for that one.
For this, yeah.
I can't find one.
Oh.
I cannot find one. I have had the word out for multiple years. Hopefully somebody will see this and reach out to you, and you can reach out to me.
Trying to find a ship.
The expectation is that I'm going to find a gun that is in the box in the shipper, and I'm going to have to just buy that and then just replace the one that's up here in this box with that, because nobody wants to sell a box and a shipper that aren't attached to the gun.
Attached together.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of my ignorance with regards to shippers. So a shipper, now that's what the box comes as it comes in the mail.
Yeah.
So typically, will that actually be mailed?
Yeah. Well, so back before 1969, you could contact, and I'll use this one as an example.
Okay.
Is you could contact Ruger prior to 1969 and say, hey, I want to buy your gun, and buy it directly from Ruger.
Yeah.
Well, you cannot, mailing rules, you cannot ship a box in the mail that says there's a gun in it.
Okay, yeah.
So the shipper is kind of dual purpose.
Yeah.
It protects the box, it gives you an extra layer, and it hides the fact, who's going to miss that, hey, this is a box from Ruger.
The logo's on there, and it also says firearms,
but
right?
It doesn't say that there's a gun in it.
Yeah.
And so this one here was actually shipped to an individual in Pueblo, Colorado.
Yeah. So it will typically have an address.
Yeah, I've got another one.
Who it's going to.
It must be in my single 6 display that actually has the postage on it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure why this one must have lost it at some point, because this one obviously was shipped this way because it has the shipping label on it. But yeah, one of the other ones I have is like $1.04.
Oh.
Like, those were the days.
Yeah.
But yeah, up until 1969, you could do that. But with the Gun Control Act of 69, that was no longer an option. And then you get shippers. They're still using the shippers because it gives you the protection.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they still have to be mailed to the gun store or whoever.
Yeah.
And so they still use the shippers. But a lot of times the gun store I worked at, when they shut down. So they went out of business. Not because I worked there, contrary to popular belief. But they went out of business. And we had a room full of old boxes, guns that we had sold, that the customer bought the gun, and we either forgot to give it to them, or they said they didn't want it.
Threw it away or something.
And we had a room full of them, and it was just as I was getting into collecting Rugers. And so as we were throwing those boxes in the garbage, anything that said Ruger went in my garbage pile and went in my truck, and I took it home. And and over the years, I've slowly gotten rid of a lot of that stuff, or given it out to other collectors, or some of it was just throwaway anyways. But that's why there's not a lot of shippers with these guns. Is the average Joe who's buying a gun has no interest in the shipper. He might save the box, but he's probably not going to save the shipper. And so this shipper right here with that 10-inch. Is one of 2 or 3 that are known to exist. And I'm glad we're at the end of the show and everybody's packing up, because all of the guns are tied on here, so you have to clip them off.
Yeah.
That's just sitting there. Yeah. That's worth more than most of these guns up here, just because it's so few and far between.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's amazing.
I slept on the couch for 2 nights over that one. You pay that much money for a cardboard box, and the accountant at the house finds out about it. Yeah, I'm glad I got a comfortable couch. Yeah.
Well, and you still have a couch, so
I keep the comfortable one. I sleep on it a lot. As a Ruger collector, I sleep on it a lot.
Yeah, that's understandable. So you have a little
the controversy, potential controversy.
This is actually an ad. Right?
Yes, this was an ad. It was in 2 publications, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think it was any more than 2, but it was June of 1963, and it was the American Rifleman, so the NRA's gun magazine, and Shooting Times. And what the situation is Ruger had just come out with their Deer Stalker, which was the 44 mag, the gun that's missing, in a rifle. And the Smithsonian had contracted this professional hunter out of Africa that they had received a permit from one of the African nations to harvest a gorilla for the Smithsonian's purposes. I don't know if it was taxidermy or at this point, I don't know why they were after it.
Contracted through the Smithsonian.
Yeah, so this is for
gorilla,
educational purposes, and the gentleman, the professional hunter that shot it with a .44 carbine. And he was pretty proud of it, and he took a picture of him posed with the gorilla, and he wrote this letter to Ruger saying how he loved this gun, how good it worked. And Bill Ruger was like, this is gold. Yeah. This is somebody using it in real life and who is talking about how good it is. This is a professional, that this is what his job is. And so he ran it. And a whole bunch of people wrote into the NRA complaining about this ad and how it was in bad taste. And what I've got not on the display but in my book in the back is I have a letter that the director, I think, of the NRA at the time, last name was Howe, he wrote this letter back to a customer that had a member who had complained, and when he did it, he copied Bill Ruger. So he sent one to the customer apologizing, and then a copy to Bill Ruger where showing Bill Ruger that he had to apologize. Then there's a letter back from Bill Ruger to Mr. Howell at the NRA, NRA, basically calling the guy a Nancy, in my term, not what he used. And then there's a third document that's 3 pages long from the NRA director back to Bill Ruger again, and defending the fact that this was never going to be put in their magazine again. And it's actually a fun little read, and it's available out there for people to find on the internet if you're good enough sleuth to find these back and forths. And and everybody always likes to say that Bill Ruger was ahead of his time. And right here, 1963, he's getting canceled.
What was the publication?
It was American Rifleman, which is the NRA magazine. And Shooting Times magazine.
And he got canceled because of the controversy behind this specific ad, right?
Obviously Bill Ruger didn't get canceled, but but it was somebody. It was enough people that complained about this ad that it was pulled, and the NRA would not let him do it again. So finding this ad is a challenge.
Yeah. So in and of itself, that makes this specific particular ad kind of rare. It's hard to find.
You've got to find a June 1963 unmolested. That's always the challenge, is finding one that it already hasn't been cut out of. Or the same June 63 Shooting Times. Either one or the other is where you're going to find a copy of that. And then again, the copies of the correspondence back and forth are fairly readily available. The copy I have is kind of blurry. I got to get a better copy, but you can read it, and you can kind of get the gist of the NRA guy apologizing to the public for allowing this to be put in it. And then you've got Bill Ruger coming back and saying, I don't see anything wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this. And then the third one is the NRA director, president, whatever his title was at the time, doubling down and saying, usually you are really good at advertising and you hit the nail on the head every time, but you really screwed up on this one. And Bill Ruger just didn't use it anymore.
It just wasn't in the publications anymore. It was pulled and
canceled.
And that's understandable to a certain extent. There's a lot of people that would view gorillas, it's ancestors. For a lot of people, I think it was probably quite traumatizing or whatever, but for hunters, those that use the guns, and that was part of the ad. This is the effectiveness of this gun, and
it was done legally.
Done legally,
done correctly,
and through a gentleman who, based on what you're saying, was well renowned.
The history of Ruger and the fun that goes with it in regards to what, where, how, and why. And again, this is only 1949 to 1963. So you get outside of that world, that's when Ruger was still very small. This is the stuff that you find. Oh, the world of collecting and the stories are just phenomenal. These get-togethers, and when we're all sitting down here and you hear these stories, the old timer, I'm kind of an old timer, but around here I feel young. And to sit down with these guys that have been doing it for 40, 50 years, and where I've only been doing it for 10 to 20, and hearing these stories that aren't necessarily written down, like this one's well documented.
Yeah.
But there's, as you start getting into it, there's so much more, and coming to these events is where you're kind of adding that context and adding to your mental repertoire of stories and focusing on, what's my next display going to be, and what can I build off of that I already have.
That is the beauty of coming to these events, the stories behind them. There's so many intricacies. If I were to walk up and look at your display, and I can see, you've got the boxes and stuff, and you have labels on here, but there's only so much that you can put in a display, even with lettering and with things to read about. To be able to walk up and to have you create something that you're passionate about, something that you've put together and that you are knowledgeable about. Well, now I get much more from it. I get the human aspect of the display. That's the beauty of going to these gun shows, especially with gun shows that have these displays like the Ruger displays that we see here. So 15 displays here. I just spent time at each display and learned. There's a plethora of knowledge. There's so many things to learn, and it's a lot of fun. Anything else you would like to share with us with regards to your display?
Second place?
Yes, absolutely.
So when they judging here, there's different areas. The Ruger collectors, we ourselves have our own judges, and we go through as Ruger collectors, and we judge each other. And so we have our own awards banquet, and I didn't win anything there. Then the Lewis and Clark traders here, who sponsor the show, they also have judges that come through that are not Ruger. They're gun people, but not Ruger people. Yeah. And so they come through and do their own judging. And so that's where I got second place this year for this display, was with Lewis and Clark Trader. And then, of course, we have the popular vote where we ask the people that are looking at the displays to vote. And I didn't get that one.
No,
but you have 3 opportunities to place. And the trifecta is, somebody who can get all 3. That's huge.
Congratulations on getting second place on your display. You have an amazing display. It's very fun. I love it. I do see a couple of other things here. You got a patch here, and you've got this little cast frame.
So this one is a space filler, because again, we forgot the gun. What this is right here, Ruger was always big on doing patches and decals. His original patches, there was about, and I don't know the exact number, but I believe a little over 4,000 of these produced. But they were produced back before they did rifles. So they say pistols and revolvers.
Oh, okay.
And so these were produced back in the 50s, and they were given away, vendors, shows.
Yeah.
Then they came out with the rifle, and they changed the pistols and revolvers to just firearms.
Oh, okay.
So these patches and decals, if you can find them, are extremely collectible. There was actually one at this show that was in not as good a condition as this, and it went for $100 and was gone.
Yeah.
And then when we look at this one over here, this is actually an as-cast 44 flat top frame. So for whatever reason, that frame was cast and then rejected. And instead of getting melted down and reused, somebody put it in their lunchbox and took it home. And so that is what the 44 flat top would look like coming out of the casting post being cut off the tree.
So that's like this section right here.
That's this middle section. So they'll have to do all the machining.
Because there's, for example, you got your 3 bolts here, so there'd be some more machining and stuff.
And if you look on the front of it, you can see where they took a hacksaw and cut it off the tree. So there's extra material at the front and at the back here where it would have been part of the pour. Because they don't pour one at a time, they pour a tree where it pour down the middle, and then it goes out into the different ones. Then you pull it out of the mold, and then you cut them off the tree.
And so for some reason that one probably didn't make it into final production, and maybe it didn't meet the specs or something like that.
Or somebody very just unique, wanted it, and they put it in their toolbox. It's hard to say at this point what, where, how, and why. And we as collectors like to speculate, but it's irrelevant. It exists.
And even in and of itself, to be able to have a cast like that is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty neat.
That's why it's on the display. Is because that is just cool.
thank you very much, Troy, for sharing.
Cool.
I learned a lot here at the Idaho show. Remember to like and subscribe. Be sure to pull the trigger on that bell icon. And as the dust settles on another rugged tactical adventure, always remember to reload your curiosity, keep the fires burning.
And we will catch you in the next round.
Catch you in the next round. Thanks for watching. Very good. That's awesome. That was so much fun.